Good morning, everyone. Today I want to give you my thoughts on Soul Calibur 6 as a game, and I want to preface this by saying that I am speaking as a Tekken player here. Even though I've been playing fighting games and Soul Calibur my entire life, I am a Tekken player first and everything else second, and I've never played this franchise on what can be considered a competitive level before. So if you want to know where Soul Calibur 6 is taking the franchise and so on, I'm not the best guy to help you. But what I can definitely do is give you my thoughts as a consumer and a player, as well as compare the game to other good games that I enjoy. What we're looking at here in the background, by the way, is my morning online session with Sungmina. I haven't cherry-picked these games, I just included all of them in sequence more or less, and I've been having a lot of fun. I think that's the first question we need to answer. Do I think Soul Calibur 6 is fun to play? And the answer to that is a resounding yes. I'm kind of surprised by how much I'm enjoying it, and the reason I say that is I thought the initial reveal for the game was kind of unimpressive, and I've obviously heard negative things said about the last few entries in the franchise. But this game feels like an explosion of color and excitement right now. The presentation is obviously fantastic, and we sort of knew that it would be. Soul Calibur has historically been the best looking and sounding fighting game out there, as far as I'm concerned, but it also has great kinetic feedback on your attacks. It feels fun and intuitive to control your character and attack. So I think both casual audiences and legacy players are going to find this game a lot of fun to play. The next thing I want to talk about is the roster, and this is an area where we might see some improvement because so far the roster is quite small. I think what they've done here is they've set the story as a prequel to the older games, because some of the later games were, like I said before, not well received, and neither were some of the new characters. So they set it as a prequel and focused on including the beloved legacy characters of the game, which I think is a very good choice. In my opinion, there are two sort of new-ish Soul Calibur characters that make a lot of sense, fit perfectly into the universe, and just are very unique. And they are Sazalamel and Tira, and they've included both of those characters as well. So the choices for the roster are pretty much perfect. I have nothing to say about that. I just wish that the roster maybe was a little bit bigger, but I am pretty sure that it's going to grow in the future. We have 3 new characters in the game as well, Grow and Gary the Wizard, and these are probably the 3 characters I enjoy the least. But I think that's just a testament to how good the legacy character design in Soul Calibur is. These are legendary characters, and it's difficult to come in as the new guy and sort of swim with the big fish. There are no characters in the roster that I sort of don't like or wish weren't there. It just seems like a really good, strong roster, even though it is a little bit on the small side. Whether or not we get a lot of new DLC characters is going to depend on the commercial success of the game, but my guess is that this game is going to find a lot of commercial success, because not only is it fun to play and have a high level of polish, it is also focused on casual game modes such as single-player campaigns and character customization, and I think that means that the game will find a large casual audience. That translates into good sales, which is not interesting for a competitive fighting game player like me. I haven't tried the single-player modes out yet, I probably won't, but that bleeds into the competitive environment if the game is successful, so it's very, very good. My big 2 wishes for DLC characters are Aeon Kalkos the Lizard Man and Setsuka, but I also think that we're going to see Cassandra before long. She's my big guess for the next big reveal that we have, but we're just going to have to wait and see. There are many really cool characters left to look forward to, and like I say, I'm pretty sure that they're going to show up eventually. The next thing I want to talk about, and this is a very important aspect, is the online. And it just so happens that the game in the background here where I'm playing against Changhua, I'm Sungmina in all of these games, by the way. This is the most fun game of Soul Calibur online that I've had so far. It had all the aspects you would want in a good competitive match. Strong, dangerous opponent, clutch comebacks, but also a crisp 5-bar connection, which is so important. Yesterday when I was playing, I played at 3 bars plus, and then I didn't limit the area of my opponents, and I had a lot of bad connection matches. But today when I played, I put it to 3+ again, but then I limited it to players who are in the same area as me, and I've had good connection matches all day, and I've also been finding games quite quickly. So if you search with the right parameters, my initial impression is that the online is solid, but I've only been playing extensively for about 2 days, so it's a little bit early to give the final verdict, but I think the online seems very solid. And I mean, Namco did a good job with Tekken, so there's no reason to assume that they wouldn't do it with Soul Calibur. And if it turns out that the online is problematic, I'm pretty sure that it's something that they're going to focus on fixing really fast, because of how important it is for the competitive lifespan of the game. But I am optimistic about this aspect of the game as well, and like I say, the game I have here against Changhua that I'm playing right now, I just remember having a huge stupid smile on my face during the whole match because of how much fun I was having. So yeah, online matches are definitely fun when you find the right one. I think the next thing I should do here, something you might expect me to do, is compare this game to Tekken 7. And that's definitely something I can do. The biggest difference, I mean, apart from the fact that it's set in the 1500s and the characters have weapons and stuff, is that in Tekken we focus a lot on moving backwards when we're being defensive, especially using an advanced technique known as the Korean backdash cancel. And this game you have a much freer range of movement that seems to be more focused around moving sideways. We definitely move sideways and sidestep in Tekken as well, but it's a very deliberate technique that you need to know when and how to use in Tekken, whereas here it feels like you're more fluid and free to move a lot. And that also changes the way that mix-ups are created in the game compared to Tekken, I think at least. In Tekken, when we mix our opponent up, we're usually mixing up a mid attack with a low attack. And while that aspect of low, mid, high and duck exists in Soul Calibur as well, it seems that in Soul Calibur the mix-ups are more oriented towards moving horizontally and then catching that horizontal movement with horizontal attacks. If we're going to compare it to Tekken, because I know a majority of my viewers are Tekken players, imagine that you're playing a match of Tekken and you have a lightning fast, super powerful sidestep, but then you turn half of the attacks in your opponent's move list into homing attacks. That's kind of what it feels like. And as a Tekken player, it's a very interesting sort of core for the matches to have, but it feels interesting and fun, and it's definitely enjoyable. If we're going to talk about game mechanics, there are a couple that I want to mention. We have critical edges, which are the equivalent of rage arts in Tekken, but they're also quite different. In Tekken, the rage art is a clutch comeback mechanic that can kill you outright if you use it out of turn. And Soul Calibur, it's a lot more forgiving because your critical edge can be used when you have full health. It's tied to your meter bar, not your health bar. They're also much safer, and that's why you're going to see them a lot more often. I'm very happy that most of the animations of these attacks are quite short, so that you're not locked into watching a long movie of yourself losing when you're playing, because they really do seem to happen quite a lot. Especially in combos, we obviously don't have long combos like in Tekken and Soul Calibur, and so it can be a good idea to use your critical edge as part of a combo, whereas in Tekken that's a little bit of a beginner trap. You typically don't want to use your rage art as part of a combo, because you end up sacrificing your rage, and it's kind of specific when you want to do that in Tekken. The other big thing you can do with your meter bar in Soul Calibur, we're seeing right here on the screen now. Oh sorry, that's critical edge. I'm talking about the soul charge, which is kind of the equivalent of rage drives in Tekken. This is the soul charge, by the way. I think both of my opponent do it, yeah. And in the rage drive in Tekken is basically you get a very powerful souped up version of your most iconic move with your character, and it's kind of the same for Soul Calibur, only you get a window of time that you can do multiple moves in. So imagine that you had a window of time in Tekken where you could do multiple rage drives in a row. You realize how powerful that sounds, and I really think it is an extremely powerful comeback mechanic in this game. I think it's more powerful than the critical edge, but it obviously also requires that you know what to do when you're in a soul charge, and it also requires you to know what your opponent has available when they are soul charging, and it creates this interesting thing where there's another layer to the requirement of character knowledge. Maybe you need to change and think differently about what moves to look out for when your opponent soul charges, and it's going to put a lot of burden on your character knowledge, which I think is fine. I think that's interesting. And then the next thing I want to talk about is the reversals. I call them the red lightning parries, but I think they're supposed to be called reversal edges. And these are the ones you've seen where you parry your opponent's attack and you go into a rock, paper, scissors mix-up situation. Now this is something that I was very skeptical about because I don't like stopping the game and forcing a mix-up like that. I've never played a game where it exists. I think it kind of exists maybe in Injustice, but I don't play NRS games, so I wouldn't know. But I prefer, if we're going to have mix-ups in the game, that they're set up by building a mind game between the two players and involve proper movement and stuff like that, not just stopping the game and then forcing the mix-up, you know, pick a button. But it's surprised me with how much depth this aspect of the game actually seems to have, because it's tied to what character you're playing. For example, we have Astaroth on the screen right now, and when he hits you with a vertical attack during a reversal situation, he basically throws you off the stage. He has one of the most powerful ring-out moves imaginable in that spot, and so that creates an interesting little layered mix-up, because your opponent obviously knows this, and they're going to be very scared because it's a one-hit kill move if it connects near the edge of the screen. But then Astaroth can choose to go for the option that beats the option that beats his vertical attack, and maybe he doesn't get to win outright, but maybe he actually gets to hit the opponent. And so there is some interesting layers to the metagame tied to reversal edges, and while I'm still a little bit skeptical, I seem to be enjoying them so far, and I'm glad that they have some serious depth to them. Otherwise I probably wouldn't have been a big fan. The last game mechanic I want to talk about are lethal hits, and this is my big favorite so far, and the one mechanic I would have loved to see in Tekken, because it actually rewards you for understanding your move design really well and using your moves properly. Basically what this is, and I finally managed to wrap my head around it yesterday, is that you have a lot of moves that can give you a lethal hit, but that only happens when you use the move in a very specific situation, and then you get extra properties, typically a launch or guaranteed damage. So it's kind of like, say you're playing Tekken and you have a move that crushes highs. It can go under highs and hit your opponent. When you hit with it normally, it doesn't really do anything impressive, but if you manage to predict and go under and crush a high with that move, then it turns into a normal hit launcher or something like that. So when the move is used in its intended situation, it becomes more powerful, and I think that's a very interesting idea. And like I say, because it rewards you for understanding your character design a little bit, I think it's a pretty cool thing to have. Now, I don't think it's necessary for the characters to gradually start removing their clothes when you hit with lethal hits. I mean, a lot of you perverts out there are probably super excited about the fact that the girls gradually strip down to micro bikinis, and I guess that's fun. I kind of think that's fun as well. I would have probably preferred if the characters got more and more sort of rugged up and bloody and had dirt on them, like they were really having a fight to the death kind of thing a little bit more, but that's just a small cosmetic aspect of the whole thing and not something I'm going to complain about. I think lethal hits are a very interesting and a fun aspect of the game as well. The last thing I want to talk about in this little discussion of mine is game difficulty and skill gap and stuff like that. And if we're going to compare this game to Tekken, I'm not a Soul Calibur expert, of course, so I can't really give you accurate information on this, but it seems to be the case that Soul Calibur is a lot easier to play than Tekken, and Tekken is famously one of the most difficult games in the world, so maybe that's fine. I obviously prefer Tekken because it's the game that I've spent years and years trying to get good at. But I think it's a lot more forgiving to try and learn and get into Soul Calibur. I mean, with Tekken it can famously take players months or sometimes years just to learn the basics of how to move properly. But in Soul Calibur, because you don't have to do difficult things with your hands that often, if you can understand something in concept, that usually means that you can execute it in-game. That doesn't mean that you're gonna do better when you're playing against other people, because that's about, you know, playing the person sitting across from you, but it does mean that your learning curve is going to be a lot more forgiving, and I think that's fine. As for whether or not your skill as a Tekken player is going to help you in Soul Calibur, I think the answer to that is also definitely yes. I mean, it's also difficult for me to say, but if you're coming to this game as a 2D fighting game player, or as somebody who doesn't have a lot of fighting game experience at all, you're definitely going to be at a disadvantage, I think, against a good Tekken player, because we're used to thinking about 3D space and stuff. I'm doing pretty well so far. These games I've showed you here, I haven't cherry-picked. It's just my session, like I said, and so far today I don't think I've lost a single game. And that's not because I'm good at Soul Calibur. It's just that I think I'm, you know, utilizing my sort of Tekken instincts a little bit to get ahead. It's not going to work in the long run, but it is going to help you initially a little bit, I think. And I think if you compare a person with no experience of Soul Calibur who's a Tekken player and no experience of Soul Calibur who's a Street Fighter player, I think the Tekken player is probably going to have a little bit of an edge, at least in the beginning. But that's just my thought. But yeah, that's going to wrap up my discussion. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen with this game. My thoughts right now is that even though I'm not a good Soul Calibur player, I feel like right now like I really want to be one, and that's a very fun space to be in mentally for a competitive fighting game player. I want to learn more about this game, and every game that goes by I pick up something new, you know, and I try to learn something new, and I'm having so much fun with it. Probably going to be the big secondary game that I play and make content on this channel going forward, aside from Tekken. Tekken obviously remaining the main game, but we'll just have to wait and see. A big thing for me is what's going to happen with the tier list. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen with that, because I think a balanced roster where everybody can have fun playing their favorite character is so important for a game like this. And when the tier list comes out, it's not going to be coming from me, obviously, because I'm not knowledgeable enough to make a good one. But there are people out there whose opinions I really trust, and I'm looking forward to see what they have to say about the roster balance. But for now, thank you so much for coming to my channel for your Soul Calibur content, even though I'm not a high-level player at this game yet. I'm definitely going to try and become one, and I hope we can enjoy this journey together. So far, it's a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being here, guys. I'll see you again very soon.